Hello, and welcome once again to Behind the Ballet. I'm Elizabeth Kaye, and today I'll be telling you about the ballet titled simply Onegin, and it is a gorgeous, sweeping work, equally beloved by audiences and by dancers. It was choreographed by John Cranko, an ingenious creator and generous soul who was born in South Africa and made his name as director of the Stuttgart Ballet. Cranko's gift for employing ballet steps to illuminate the scope and nuance of human emotion established him as one of the finest and most lauded choreographers of the 20th century. As you will see in Onegin, he was a master of lyrical dance, and his brilliantly crafted pas de deux resonate with romance and beauty and power. Cranko's Onegin premiered in 1965, but the ballet's origins harken back to two of the most significant artists of the 19th century. Russia's greatest poet, Alexander Pushkin, whose epic novel in verse, Eugene Onegin, inspired Russia's greatest composer, Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, to create an opera based on Pushkin's poetic work. Something I've always found fascinating is that for both Pushkin and Tchaikovsky, key passages in Pushkin's poem and in the Onegin ballet became bizarre instances of their lives imitating art. In one of these passages, a young man becomes jealous and incensed when Onegin flirts with his fiancée. He challenges Onegin to a duel, during which Onegin kills him. Well, at the age of 37, Pushkin was killed in a duel after his own jealousy prompted him to insist on dueling with a man who is rumored to be having an affair with his wife. Another key passage occurs when our youthful, love-struck heroine, Tatiana, writes an impassioned letter to Onegin, to which he reacts with cruelty and scorn. Curiously, as Tchaikovsky was composing his Onegin opera, a young, love-struck woman wrote an impassioned love letter to him, which he ignored. She wrote again, threatening to kill herself if he did not reply. In examining his behavior, Tchaikovsky wrote this to his brother: "It seemed to me that I had myself acted incomparably more basely than Onegin, and I became really furious with myself." And so, in part because he abhorred the prospect of behaving like Onegin, Tchaikovsky married this young woman, a union that for the homosexual Tchaikovsky would leave him so depressed and desperate that soon after the wedding he attempted to drown himself in the icy Moskva River. John Cranko first had the idea of choreographing a ballet based on Pushkin's verse novel back in 1952, when he created dancers for Tchaikovsky's Eugene Onegin opera. But he was not able to pursue it until more than a decade later, after he had become director of Stuttgart Ballet and had a grand success with his lush, heartrending version of Romeo and Juliet. As Cranko embarked on Onegin, the one thing management insisted on was that the music for Tchaikovsky's opera could not be used. Instead, Cranko turned to his musical conductor, Kurt-Heinz Stoltz, who crafted a score from Tchaikovsky's piano pieces that is by turns lilting and darkly dramatic. Cranko's Onegin has become one of those special balletic works that dancers yearn to perform, partly because Cranko's choreography is so expressive and exquisite, and also because the leading characters are presented with an intriguing dramatic challenge as they each undergo a metamorphosis in the course of the ballet's wrenching 3 acts. With its rich, fully realized characterizations and jarringly unruly emotions, Onegin demands that dancers invest every bit of themselves into the story and the movement, and by so doing, they often unearth depths of feeling they didn't know they possessed. Act 1 takes place in a lovely country garden in 1820s Russia. There, a mother, her daughter Olga, and Olga's nurse are putting the finishing touches on dresses to be worn that evening at a party to celebrate the birthday of Olga's sister, Tatiana. But Tatiana, lovely and innocent, is not interested in dresses. Her attention is riveted by one of the romance novels she loves to read, novels that set her dreaming. Even when their friends arrive, Tatiana keeps on reading, but the vivacious Olga leads the other girls in a lovely and lively dance. Olga's mother gives her a mirror. Now with it, the girls can play a traditional folk game that decrees that the man whose face you see in the mirror is your beloved. Next to enter the garden is Olga's fiancé Lenski, a youthful, ardent poet. Olga is gazing into the mirror and doesn't see Lenski as he playfully sneaks up on her. When his handsome image appears in her mirror, Olga is thrilled. Lenski has brought with him a friend from St. Petersburg, Eugene Onegin. We see instantly that Onegin is different. Everyone else is joyful and clad in light colors. Onegin, an aristocrat, wears black and a haughty expression. He's accompanied Lenski with the thought that a weekend in the country might alleviate his persistent boredom. Olga introduces Onegin to Tatiana, who is so shy that she piques his interest, and they stroll off together. Meanwhile, we see that Lenski and Olga are besotted with each other, as their jubilant pas de deux has a tenderness and airborne lightness that can leave you believing that nothing bad can ever happen here. But, as we will see, and as Tatiana muses at a later point in Pushkin's poem, fate has a different conclusion. Everyone has left the garden when Onegin and Tatiana return. He asks what she's reading. She hands him her book, and when he sees it's merely a romance novel, he hands it back with a dismissive expression. In this scene, the dancers need to convey so much without the aid of a single word. And when I watch them, I'm reminded that this ballet belongs to the genre known as narrative ballet, and that Krenko liked to say that what defines narrative ballets is that they are so sharply and finely drawn that even when the audience knows nothing in advance about the characters or the plot, they are never in doubt about what is happening on the stage. So what we see happening here is that just as Tatiana is becoming hopelessly enamored of Onegin, his thoughts are elsewhere. She's lost in him, but he's lost in himself. He gives Tatiana just enough attention to keep her hopes alive and to keep her from seeing that he is a man who neither knows nor cares about love. It's as if he's immersed in some secret sorrow, which only makes him, to her young eyes, more appealingly elusive and mysterious. Finally, they give us a vivid visual metaphor as they go drifting off in opposite directions. Act 2 brings us to Tatiana's bedroom, where she is flushed in a glow as she fantasizes about Onegin and experiences for the very first time that torrent of passion she's read about in her countless romance novels. She writes a love letter to Onegin, then drifts off to sleep. In her dream, she goes to the mirror, where she sees Onegin's image, and then sees Onegin himself as he steps out of the mirror and rushes to her. This, of course, is not Onegin as he is. It is Onegin as she yearns for him to be, an Onegin who carries her aloft on his shoulder, who wraps her in his arms. Their swooning, passionate pas de deux is one of the most rapturous pas de deux in ballet. And what makes it tricky for the dancers is that while their every movement must be drenched in dizzying abandonment, they must also take care to never veer into melodrama by overdoing the emotion. And of course, it is essential throughout these dazzling lifts and turns that the ballerina can trust that she is safe and secure in her partner's arms. Finally, Onegin slips through the mirror again, and Tatiana wakes. Thrilled by her dream and believing in its veracity, Tatiana gives her nurse the love letter she's written to Onegin and tells her to deliver it to him. The next scene is Tatiana's birthday party, attended by the local gentry. Tatiana arrives, brimming with expectation. Onegin dances with her briefly, then, not bothering to conceal his boredom, he sits at a table, playing solitaire. Eventually, he brings Tatiana the letter she wrote him and tries to give it back to her. When this sets her weeping, he tears up the letter and harshly shoves the torn pieces into her hands. Then, Prince Gremin arrives in the ballroom. Now, this is someone who actually interests the snobbish Onegin, but the prince has eyes only for Tatiana. Stung and bored, Onegin amuses himself by flirting with Olga, dancing with her, toying with her, and humiliating his friend Lenski, who grows increasingly jealous and enraged. Finally, when Lenski can take it no more, he hauls off and slaps Onegin's face. Olga and Tatiana try to calm him, but it's gone too far. To save his honor, Lenski challenges Onegin to a duel, and Onegin accepts the challenge. The next scene is a forest in the dead of winter, in the dead of night. The moon is high, the trees are bare. One day ago, Lenski was brimming with joy, but now he is somber and mournful. He kneels with his arms stretched upward prayerfully toward the heavens, and you sense he knows precisely what awaits him. Olga and Tatiana try desperately to convince him to forego the duel, but he ignores their entreaties. When Olga kisses him, he responds for a moment, then hurls her to the ground. Now tragedy beckons, as the devastated Lenski and Olga are shorn of the innocence and capacity for joy that were their essential qualities. Moments later, the duel ensues, and Onegin murders Lenski. As he walks past Tatiana, and as she faces him, it's as if in that moment she has ascended from being a dreamy girl to a knowing woman. Even Onegin undergoes a change as he buries his face in his hands and collapses in shame. And what these two dancers are doing is both difficult and integral to their art. Without dancing one single step, they are revealing nuances of character and a wealth of emotion. Now we come to Act 3, which takes place several years later. The scene is a ball in the grand St. Petersburg Palace of Prince Kremen, where aristocrats are taking part in a gracious flowing dance. When Onegin enters the ballroom, we see that the years have not been kind to him. Previously, he was lost in himself. Now, he just seems lost. But then he is dazzled by the prince's wife, a stunning, stately beauty who he suddenly realizes is Tatiana, the youthful country girl he scorned and rejected. Misery overtakes him. He seeks to avoid her gaze. When the prince presents Tatiana to him, she hastens away, leaving Onegin mired in agony, as he confronts how foolhardy he was to have so casually and cruelly tossed her away. The final scene is set in Tatiana's bedroom. Now, in a total turnabout, it is Tatiana reading a passionate love letter sent to her by Onegin, and we can see the panic churning in her. Her husband comes to bid her good night. She tries to get him to stay with her, but he insists on leaving, and from this action we can deduce something is lacking in their marriage. Moments later, Onegin appears as Tatiana sits stonily at her dressing table. He is overcome by emotion and kneels before her, then lies at her feet in a posture of self-abasement. At last he knows what love is. It consumes him, but it is too late. Here again, the dancers must tell us so much solely through their expressions and movement, and we can see from their tumultuous pas de deux that Tatiana loves him still, yet does not allow herself to forget that she is now another man's wife and has pledged to be true to him. And so, finally, echoing Onegin's brutal gesture from so many years ago, Tatiana tears up his letter and thrusts the torn pieces into his hands. Then she orders him to leave her forever. He goes, and she stands there alone, strong and sure, yet grief-stricken and bereft. It is a uniquely complex moment, and it requires the most profound artistry. At the last, the saga of Onegin and Tatiana is one in which neither can attain their heart's desire. Onegin is condemned to a life of regret, while Tatiana has chosen to forego passion and to enshroud herself in duty and honor. One of the many things this ballet shows us is something known to many of us, namely the tyranny of bad timing. For if only Onegin had responded lovingly to the youthful Tatiana, if only he could have recognized then what he later comprehends, their lives would have been so different. Instead, they are both consigned to live with the burden of knowing what can never be, but might have been. And so, what Don Quixote has given us is a ballet as turbulent as it is exquisite, a ballet destined to call forth the best in those who dance it. And with its epic themes of love, passion, duty, honor, shame, and regret, it is a ballet certain to sear itself into our minds and our hearts. Thank you for being here and joining me for Behind the Ballet.